a category-based product list, or it can be a list of search results.
Okay, first of all, I want to say a big thank you for being here with us today at Iconic Man. I know you're a busy guy, so thank you very much for accepting our invitation. So welcome. I want you to tell us a little bit about yourself, because there is few people that know what the Iconic Man behind the Baymard Institute does on a daily basis.
So what we do at Baymard is we do large-scale e-commerce usability testing. A typical day is to connect with the different research teams we have at the company, because everyone works remotely. So you can say it's a distributed team across, I think we are right now in 5 different time zones. So there's always a bit of connecting with all of the research teams. Basically, I, to some extent, see myself as someone whose main job is servicing my employees. So making them perform the best as possible by providing vision and guidance, but also removing any roadblocks they have in their daily work.
So you mentioned you work with people remotely. Is it better to work with them remotely rather than having them in an office?
I would say it's 2 very different setups with each some pros and cons. So it's true that when you have an office, it's easier to quickly connect and discuss something, and you to some extent lose a bit of that when working remotely. It's not that we don't meet. It's very easy to just use Slack or something like that and then set up a dedicated call. But there is definitely a bit you lose out. For us, it's very much because we're in so many different time zones that it can be difficult to just quickly meet with someone. And if you have something you need to discuss, then that can also be difficult. So it do require some structure to have a remote company, and some policies for how do you meet and how do you reach out to people depending on how urgently you need feedback. So there's a difference between needing feedback casually and needing feedback urgently.
What was your moment of truth when you started your business? I want to hear about the frustration, the passion, the fear, problems, maybe even with money.
So I started Baymard with another co-founder. His name is Jamie Appleseed. And way before we started the Baymard Institute, he worked as a lead technical developer at a somewhat large agency. This is 9 years ago. And he had this observation that when it came to making decisions about web designs, so the design team had created, 3 different variations of a particular web page design. And then they had this meeting where they had to design which version should we choose, version A, version B, or version C. He found that the final decision often came down to one of 3 situations. Either there was someone who was really passionate in the room who convinced everybody else that let's go with design version A. It was usually the designer who designed the version A himself, right? Other times it was essentially, if the meeting dragged on for a long time, the boss said, I'm the boss, I'm designing, let's go with version B. He often said it slightly nicer, but that was what he meant. Or the client said, if they were in the meeting, we're the client, we're paying, we want version C. Very seldomly someone said, we have research data that suggests version D is actually the one that will perform the best with users. And this observation here is basically what we have based the entire company on. This one observation, can we somehow provide that piece of data that you can bring into a design meeting or decision meeting and then help inform your design decisions to make more research-based and qualified decisions instead of basing them mainly on opinion and gut feeling. And that's the whole foundation we have for the company and the goal we set out those 9 years ago and what we're still working towards. Then you can say, do we have any challenges in the beginning? Yes, certainly. Our issue was then, okay, so we need to create some research. That takes a very long time. It took 2 years to create our first research study. So for the first 2 years, we didn't have any product to sell. It doesn't work if we just build a product for 2 years, then launch it and don't have an audience to launch it towards. So we figured we need from day one to start building an audience and a blog and a following. So we don't just deploy a product in vacuum. So from day one, we launched Baymard.com as a blog talking about UX design and UX research, where we then basically based that on existing academic research and then condensed that into articles because our own research wasn't ready. And then maybe half a year or a year into it, we could start basing on our, at that time, unpublished findings. And then keep on doing that. So basically every second week we posted a new article for our blog for 2 years without having a product to sell. That was by far the hardest 2 years of starting the company, because we obviously didn't earn any money and we spent quite some time on it. So this was working. We both had full-time jobs next to this.
So basically, you didn't start a company with money from investors. You started it with your friend by yourselves. And because you didn't have this money, you basically didn't want to waste any time. So you spent that time building an audience. After 9 years, if you had to synthesize your business goals in one sentence, what would that sentence be?
Yeah, that's a good question. You can say our goals for our business is still quite embedded in that initial observation, that initial story I told you before. So our goal is pretty strict on being a provider of research that help inform e-commerce companies to make better decisions about their designs and user experiences. That's sort of the very direct goal that we work towards, because it's somewhat of a universal goal where we can always be better, provide better research. So it's a goal that, at least so far, have sort of stood the test of time. It's not something that will outdate in 1 or 2 years. And I think that's maybe one of the lessons we have learned here. Find a goal or a mission that isn't too time sensitive, that's not hinged up on a single trend right now, but will be true 5 or 10 years from now, and then focus relentlessly on that one goal. And that's sort of been our business strategy. Our goal is that or one of our main tactics or way we operate is that we focus very intensely on doing this one thing extremely well. And we aspire to be the best in the world on doing just that. And then there's a whole lot of things we don't do. So we don't do traditional consulting. When people ask, even very large companies, Fortune 500 companies, do you do hourly consulting? We say no. Because if we want to be the best in the world at building this research catalog, then we cannot do 5 or 10 other things at the same time. It's not that they're bad for business in isolation, but if we want to be the best at this one goal, then we cannot do these 10 other things.
I watch interviews of other successful people like you, and everybody says that when you start a business, you don't have to focus on what's right in front of you. You need to think what is going to happen in 5 or 10 years. What would you say was your greatest challenge with Baymard?
So obviously launching the company was one very big challenge. Actually getting through those 2 years and having a good product to launch. Then obviously building the audience is also a major challenge. And those, I would say, they are no longer challenges, but they are still our key focus. The quality of our products and services, and then how do we engage the best with customers? Those are still sort of 2 key focus areas. So right now we have a research catalog of 42,000 hours of e-commerce UX research. So how do we actually maintain and update a catalog that large? Because it takes the research team more than a year to update the entire research catalog. So that's sort of a challenge we have. Then obviously hiring and maintaining existing employees is obviously also a big challenge. If you identify this long-term goal or problem that you solve for your customers and focus on that, then the challenges you will have will typically be something that come and go or change quite a lot. At least it's been that way for us, that then we have a challenge for 1 or 2 years, and then it changes to something else.
You talk about how important it is to retain your employees. How do you motivate them to stay focused on work?
That's a very good question. It's definitely also one of the challenges that exist. It's not so much, I would say, one thing. Firstly, it's individual, and that's, I think, is important to keep in mind, that what motivates one employee is different from another employee, or at least what can be motivational or also demotivational. But I would say there are some general principles. So firstly, we try to give people a lot of say and involvement in basically all decisions we have. So we have some processes for how we run projects and how you propose a new project. So basically any employee can suggest any kind of project regardless of size. There are just a number of steps and some things you have to present, and then it can be approved, and then resources will be allocated. So that's one way where we motivate employee, ensure that they have, in theory, say in every single business decision. Should we close this entire product line and build something new? That's any employee can suggest that, and if their observations and arguments and analysis hold true, then we will also execute on that. So that's one part of motivation. Then another part of that, well, at least what we do for motivation, is that we allow people to really focus on their work and not get too distracted with a lot of meetings. We have set up all of our work processes so they are fairly clear and defined, meaning that when you're in each stage of what you have to perform in terms of what your work task is, then it's quite clear what the boundaries are, but within those boundaries you have complete freedom to how you want to perform your work and how you want to structure your workday. So that also motivates quite a lot of people.
Sometimes they find it hard to remain motivated and keep on waking up early. My question to you is, what motivates you to wake up every day at 5 a.m. and keep doing what you do?
Two things primarily. One, feeling that there are meaningful challenges that have to be resolved. So that is typically not in the beginning of a startup, but once you have run a company for some 5 years, if everything just works, it actually gets kind of boring at some point, or at least it don't motivate you to pull in, 70 or 80 hours or more per week and really give it everything you got and lay awake at night and wondering. So there needs to be a challenge. And at Baymard, we have had some, when it starts to get, somewhat of a routine, it also just happens to be that we have then made some major changes to the company. Typically, maybe because we're resting a bit too much on our laurels, we have sort of tried to reinvent a bit of the company or how we work or what we actually sell. So that's one aspect of, I would say, what motivates me. Another aspect is seeing that we make an actual difference for our customers. That's the number one motivational factor and why we do this. Getting feedback from our customers that this research have given a conversion increase of 20% and I'm now promoted, or we have sold for $10 million extra on our website, or this have meant the world to me, the research insights you have. That's really what motivates us. Hearing that from our customers and knowing that we help them with that and figuring out how can we help them even more. That's, I would say, is the number one motivational factor for me, at least.
So pretty much you wake up to start working and building more and more, and that keeps you motivated. What is the number one advice you would give a young entrepreneur that is aspiring to have an iconic lifestyle?
I think it will probably tap a bit into what we have talked about so far. But I would say spend quite some time not necessarily figuring out how do you make money here and now. Spend a lot of energy and time on figuring out what is the problem that you're solving for your customers and who are your customers. You don't have to be, target a super broad audience. That's at least not what we have done. We have targeted somewhat of a niche, and then we have become the best in that. So figure out what is the problem that you're solving, and you don't have to solve a problem for 10 million customers. It's quite fair if you have a problem that you only solve it for 1,000 customers, as long as it's then very, very important for those 1,000 customers, so they can become your fan or sort of your go-to source. That's my main advice. Figure out what that is, spend some time on that, and make sure that it's something that's not too much of a trend right now, but something that will also hold true in 5 years. Because when you have that, you can then focus relentlessly on that, and then cut away all distractions, and then along the line or along the way, you will figure out how do you make the most money. So that is just to say, you can start with something now, and then just know that as long as you keep solving this problem, you can change the actual business model for how you solve that problem or how you charge your customers. You can change that after 2 or 3 years or 5 or 6 years. It does. So the business model don't have to be perfect upfront, but the problem you solve and the goal for the long-term goal for your company, that have to be somewhat perfect from the start, or at least it have to be clear so you can focus relentlessly on that.
So basically, don't focus on making money, focus on solving a problem, and then the money will come. Do you guys do your marketing yourselves? Like, do you have a department that does marketing, or do you work with a company that does the marketing for you?
We do very, very little proactive marketing. So we don't actually do any sort of marketing in traditional sense. Our main source for new customers and leads are two things. That blog or article thing we started 9 years ago, and that we have posted every second week for now 9 years in a row now. That started out small, like we had 10 subscribers and 50 subscribers, and I think after doing it, for I don't know, half a year or a full year, we still only had 100 or 150 subscribers. Now we have 20,000. So now there's a real impact. So it takes obviously some time to build something like that, but now it's our number one vehicle for customers and leads. That's how we get almost all of our customers. So 95% of our marketing effort is that blog. So you can say it's not something we pay money for, but obviously we spend quite a lot of resources on it. It takes 1 or 2 full working days to create a blog post like that, or like the ones we create, and we have some 240 now, so that's 500 work days that we have spent. So you can say that's also a significant marketing expense if you translate that in all that time into money.
How does your current business benefit its customers, and what is the impact that you want to have with your brand in the coming years?
It's still really the same as it was in the beginning, or at least the core principle. We help them basically make better design decisions. The way we actually help them now, though, is different, because we have simply more research. Now we have research on almost every aspect of online retail, so e-commerce, user experiences and designs. So now we can obviously help them with more of their decisions than we could 5 years ago. But the underlying way where we benefit our customers is still the same. By providing them research they can take into their decisions and decision meetings. Actually still what we'll go about going forward. We'll keep broadening what types of research can we help our customers with. So making it more and more detailed and more niche, and covering more unique markets, unique industries.
Does the research that you guys have work with dropshipping stores? Because dropshipping is such a big thing now. And can they use your research to increase their sales?
So our research is not tied to a platform at all or a specific method. We focus exclusively on e-commerce user experiences from an end user's perspective. And what we find in our research is that users have no clue, and they don't care about what platform you're using or what method you're using. They care only about the actual web page that you serve them. Then it's true as a business, there are some platforms that's easier to work with and easier to achieve a good design with than others, but users don't understand the underlying technical layers that serve up the web page. They only care about the web page. So all of our research findings apply to any kind of platform or business method as long as it's selling some kind of product online. Then if it's a traditional retail e-commerce website you have, then it's the full catalog that applies. If it's a bit special B2B niche e-commerce site you have that only sells subscriptions for businesses, then it's maybe only half of our research findings that apply, but those findings will still apply.
Okay, and the final question is, all iconic men have a way of balancing their professional and personal lives. How do you manage to keep up with all your ongoing stuff?
That's a good question. It's something that have changed. When we started Baymard, we obviously worked around the clock basically for the first 2 or 3 years. Back then, I didn't have a family, so there it was easier to balance it because there really wasn't that much to balance. So I still work a lot, but when I then don't work, I stop work. And that means 2 things. 1, I don't have a laptop at home. 2, I leave my phone in the hallway, so I can't keep checking my phone. Meaning that when I'm home, I'm then actually home and don't focus on work and don't allow anyone to call me or distract me, basically, and don't seek it out myself. And that is what then allows and justify that I still work somewhat long hours, is that when I'm then home, it's actually quality time instead of being home and then you keep sitting and checking emails every 10th minutes, and then all of a sudden you have to, because you saw an email, you have to go to your computer and answer something complex, and then that takes half an hour, and then you're really only halfway there. So I'd rather be there a few hours less, and then when I'm there, it's 100% focused on then family and friends.
So thank you very much for coming. I really enjoyed talking to you, and so I'll get back to you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Have a nice one. Bye.